The palace of was never silent. Its tall glass towers sang when the wind touched them, and its silver walkways hummed softly as energy flowed through their veins. Yet on this day, the entire kingdom felt strangely still. Even the great banners of the royal court hung limp, as if holding their breath. Queen stood alone at the edge of the balcony, her long cloak trailing behind her like a dark river. She had ruled her people for nearly 60 cycles, watching wars rise, alliances fall, and stars shift across the edge of the galaxy. Nothing surprised her anymore. Nothing frightened her anymore. Nothing moved her anymore. Until today. She kept her gaze locked on the sky where the clouds rippled unnaturally, spiraling into a single glowing point. The watchers stationed along the wall exchanged uncertain glances. No ship had announced arrival. No beacon had been lit. No code had been sent. Whatever was coming was not expected. Advisors whispered behind her, nervous like children. General Wren, the tallest among them, finally stepped forward. "My queen, the readings are unstable. We cannot identify the source. It is not any fleet in our star maps." "Did not turn, I know." "What do you command?" "Prepare the landing platforms. No weapons drawn." The general blinked in disbelief. "No weapons, my queen, if this is a threat." She raised one hand, silencing him. Her eyes were still fixed on the widening spiral of light. Something ancient stirred inside her chest, a memory she had buried beneath years of leadership and caution. A legend, a story told to her when she was a child. A story of creatures from the blue cradle who vanished long before Rose. A species small in size but terrifying in spirit. A people whose bravery could not be measured by strength or technology, only by heart. Humans. But that was impossible. Humans were myths, shadows spoken of in dusty archives. They were believed extinct, wiped out in wars no one remembered clearly. Some scholars claimed they never existed at all. Yet the sky was opening, and the queen felt her pulse slow, as if the universe itself waited. The light snapped open into a tear, and a vessel unlike anything in their records slipped through. It was not sleek like craft nor jagged like the warships of the outer clans. It was simple, old, burned with age but holding steady with stubborn resolve. As it descended, the air around it shimmered. Whispered, "It cannot be." The ship touched down on the central platform with a hiss of cooling metal. Guards stepped forward cautiously, but the queen raised her hand again. "No one approaches before I do." Her advisors stared, stunned. She walked toward the platform with slow, calm steps. Her cloak brushed the ground like a shadow following her. The ship's ramp dropped. Smoke drifted out, clearing enough for a single figure to appear. A being stepped into view, tall compared to their legends, but unmistakably human. His skin was marked with scars, his clothes torn, his breathing heavy as if he had crossed half the galaxy on sheer will alone. He looked around with wary eyes, but not afraid, not defeated. Alive. Real. Stopped only a few steps away from him. She felt her heart tremble, a rare, forbidden thing for a queen who had hardened herself long ago. The man stared back at her, equally stunned to find himself face to face with a ruler of an alien empire. For a moment, no one spoke. The world felt suspended in thick silence. Then the queen exhaled, her voice breaking into a whisper meant for no one but herself. The legends were true. The human swallowed, unsure of what any of this meant. He did not bow. He did not flinch. He simply stood, as though ready to defend himself against a world he had never seen before. Felt something shift inside her. This was no ordinary visitor. Whatever path he had taken, however impossible his survival seemed, fate had brought him here. Her people watched from a distance, thousands of eyes waiting for her next command. Instead of giving one, the queen took a step closer. "Human," she said, her voice steady again, "tell me your name." The man hesitated, then answered quietly. "My name is..." And for the first time in many years, the queen felt destiny touch her shoulder. This was only the beginning. The moment spoke his name, the air around the platform felt heavier. Queen studied him carefully, as though trying to read every scar, every movement, every quiet breath he took. The guards stayed tense behind her, unsure if this human was a danger or a miracle. Looked exhausted, yet he stood straight, shoulders squared, refusing to show weakness. His eyes carried a weight did not understand yet, something deeper than pain, older than fear. She said again, as if testing how the sound fit in her mouth. You came from beyond the veiled rim. No one crosses that boundary. No one returns. He gave a tired half-nod. I didn't have another choice. His voice was quiet but firm, a voice shaped by surviving things no living map described. For a moment, almost asked him what he had seen, what he had lost, but she stopped herself. A queen did not pry. A queen waited. Still, she felt a spark of worry crawl up her spine. Why would a lone human cross a forbidden boundary that swallowed fleets? Before she could ask, stumbled slightly. The long journey had taken its toll. Without thinking, reached forward and caught his arm. Stiffened, unsure whether to pull away. You are safe here, she said softly, surprising even herself with the gentleness. His expression softened, only for a second. General Wren finally stepped closer. My queen, we should escort the visitor inside. His condition is unstable. Nodded, prepare the healing hall, and no restraints. The general almost choked. No restraints, Your Majesty, we don't know what he is capable of. Turned slowly, her eyes sharp. We also do not know what he has suffered. Her voice held the quiet force of thunder. The general bowed immediately. Watched all of this with a confusion that he tried to hide. He was not used to kindness from powerful beings, not anymore. The healing hall shone with soft blue light. Silken curtains floated around crystal beds filled with warm energy. Sat on the edge of one, shoulders tense, ready to defend himself at the slightest threat. A healer approached him with slow, careful steps. You may rest, the chamber will not harm you. His fingers twitched toward his side, as if expecting a weapon that wasn't there. Noticed. You do not trust easily, she said quietly. Gave a humorless smile. Trust is expensive where I come from. Where do you come from? Asked. Hesitated, his jaw tightened. His eyes clouded briefly, showing a storm he kept buried. I come from the ruins of the Sol frontier. Froze. The advisors behind her exchanged horrified whispers. The Sol frontier was a name carved into the darkest pages of the galaxy, a place consumed by destruction and silence. No one who entered its broken sectors ever returned. How, she whispered. Everyone believed, none survived. Exhaled shakily. Everyone believed right. The healer paused, sensing his pain. Continued, voice rough. I'm the last one from my colony. Our worlds are dust. I escaped only because I refused to die. Felt a sharp ache in her chest. The legends had spoken of human resilience, but hearing it from his lips made it real, too real. She stepped closer. What destroyed your frontier? The question cut into the deepest part of him. For a moment, he looked as if he couldn't breathe. His hands clenched the edge of the bed until his knuckles turned white. Then he whispered, a darkness that grows. Felt cold. What is it, a species, a weapon? His eyes lifted slowly, and the grief inside them made the room feel smaller. A force, he said. Something living but not alive. It consumes stars. It hunts civilizations. We tried to fight it. We failed. The hall fell silent. The healers stepped back. Even Wren, who feared nothing, looked shaken. Lowered her head slightly, absorbing the truth. Her people had always believed their kingdom stood far from danger, protected by their advanced barriers and alliances. But this was not a threat any wall could hold. Watched her reaction with a strange sadness. I didn't come to bring fear, he said softly. Then why did you come? She asked. His voice trembled not with weakness, but with memory. To warn the last empire still standing. His breath caught. And to ask, whispered, for help. The queen stared at him. A human, a myth, arriving alone through impossible space, carrying a warning that could reshape the fate of the galaxy. She didn't know yet whether he was hope or disaster. But she knew this. The legends were true, and legends never arrived without purpose. The next morning, the palace felt different. Even the sunlight streaming through the silver towers seemed cautious, as if aware of the fragile tension in the air. Queen walked the corridors with deliberate steps, her mind still on. She had ruled for decades, seen countless crises, and faced enemies from the farthest stars, but never a visitor like him, not one carrying both warning and hope in equal measure. Had spent the night in the healing hall. By dawn, his wounds had stabilized, but the scars in his heart remained visible. Watched him from a distance, noticing the way he moved carefully, as if every step could awaken some hidden danger. There was no arrogance in him, no demand for status, only a quiet strength that made her wonder how a single human could survive where entire fleets had vanished. Finally, she decided to confront him. She entered the hall without ceremony, stood by the large window looking at the sprawling city beneath the palace. "Good morning," she said simply. Turned slowly. "Good morning, Your Majesty." His voice carried no awe, only respect. "Do you know why I brought you here?" she asked, stepping closer. His eyes narrowed slightly, to see if humans are as strong as the stories claim. Smiled faintly. "Partly, but mostly, I need to know if you can trust us." The words hit him harder than she expected. Humans were trained to trust no one, to depend on no one. To survive, sometimes the only option was to carry the weight alone. Yet here, in the heart of an alien empire, someone asked him to trust. "I can try," he said carefully. Studied him. "Good, then we begin." She gestured toward the courtyard. "Follow me." Obeyed silently. The courtyard was massive, lined with statues of past rulers, their eyes carved in expressions of eternal vigilance. Stopped in the center and raised her hand. A platform rose from the ground beneath them, glowing faintly. "This," she said, "is the chamber of trials. Every leader, every warrior must pass this test. It is not physical alone. It tests courage, wisdom, and heart. If you can pass it, you will have my trust and the aid of this empire." His brow furrowed. "I'm not a warrior of your empire." "No," she said softly. "You are a human. Perhaps that is why the trial is perfect for you." The platform shifted, carrying them into a massive hall, walls shimmering like liquid starlight. Sounds of distant storms and whispers echoed around them. Shadows moved in impossible ways, twisting and stretching. Instinctively took a step back, but placed a hand on his shoulder. "Fear is natural," she said. "Courage is acting despite it." The first trial began. From the shadows emerged creatures of smoke and fire, visions, illusions created by the chamber. They roared, clawed, and lunged toward, but he did not run. Instead, he remembered his fallen colony, his lost people, the worlds consumed by the darkness he had fled. He stood firm, gripping a metallic rod provided by the chamber, and struck only when he had to. Each movement precise, careful, yet full of determination. Watched, impressed. The chamber intensified. Floors seemed to vanish beneath him. Flames licked the walls. A voice whispered in 1,000 tones, mocking him, warning him to flee. Most warriors would have broken. Most humans, perhaps all but the strongest, would have turned back. Paused, closing his eyes for a fraction of a second. In that moment, he thought of the queen, her calm faith in him, and the people who still depended on someone surviving. Then he opened his eyes and pressed forward. He struck the illusions with accuracy, avoided traps with instinct, and faced every trial with a mix of cunning and bravery no alien could teach. Sweat streaked his face. His muscles ached. His lungs burned. But still he did not yield. Finally, the chamber fell silent. The shadows melted into nothingness. The starlit walls receded, leaving standing in the center of the hall, breathing heavily but victorious. Stepped forward, her eyes wide. I have never seen courage like this," she said, her voice trembling slightly. You are extraordinary." Looked at her, exhausted but unbowed. "I just did what I had to do," he said quietly. "No," she said firmly. "You did more than survive. You faced impossible fear and moved forward anyway. That is the human spirit." For a brief moment, both stood in silence. One a queen, ruler of a mighty alien empire. The other a human, the last survivor of a destroyed world. And yet in that hall they were equals, bound not by species, but by courage, determination, and the unspoken promise that the galaxy's future might yet depend on them. Finally reached out and touched his arm. She said, "The chamber does not lie. If you have this in your heart, then perhaps, together, we can face the darkness you warned us of." Met her gaze, and for the first time since he had left his home, he felt hope stirring alongside fear. After the trial, the palace felt quieter, almost tense in a way that made even the wind pause. Queen moved through her private chambers, thinking of, the human had survived a challenge that even the most seasoned warriors would have struggled with. And yet his victory was only the beginning. She could feel it in the air. His presence had stirred more than admiration. By mid-afternoon, her advisors gathered. Their expressions were a mix of awe and fear. "My queen," General Wren said, "the chamber of trials it confirmed he is brave beyond measure. But some of the council are unsettled. A human among us, it is unprecedented." Remained calm. "They fear what they do not understand. Let them adjust." "But some believe," one advisor whispered, "that granting him influence could weaken the throne." Eyes sharpened. A throne is not only kept by fear, it is kept by wisdom. If this human carries truth from the Sol frontier, ignoring him is far more dangerous than embracing him. The advisors murmured uneasily. Dismissed them for now, but the unease did not fade. She needed answers, and she knew could not remain idle. She found him in the library, surrounded by towering shelves filled with starlit archives. Was studying maps of the outer sectors, tracing routes with a careful finger. The scars of his past flickered across his expression, memories that weighed more heavily than any burden in the galaxy. "You work quickly," said, stepping quietly behind him. Did not turn immediately. "Time does not wait," he said softly, "and the darkness I warned you of, it grows with every cycle." Studied him. "Tell me more, your journey, why did you come alone?" He closed the map carefully, meeting her gaze. "The fleets from my world were gone before I could organize a defense. I was the last to escape. Alone, I could move faster, avoid detection. If I brought anyone with me, they would have died before reaching you." She felt a pang of sadness. A human, bearing not only his survival, but the weight of an entire lost civilization. "And you survived," she said quietly. "I had to," he replied, "because if I failed, no one would remain to warn others." Silence hung between them for a moment. Then's expression hardened. "The council may not see your value. Some will resist your presence, seeing you as a threat rather than an ally. You must be careful." Nodded, his jaw set. "I am ready. If the people reject me, then I will earn their trust, one step at a time." Before could respond, a disturbance rippled through the palace. Alarms sounded faintly in the distance, guards rushing through corridors, whispers turning into shouts. His heart quickened. Something inside the Empire was moving against them. She grabbed Sarm. "Come," she said. They ran toward the main observation deck. Below them, shadows moved across the city. Citizens shouted and ran, but these were not ordinary citizens. They wore the uniform of the rebellion, a secret faction long believed contained. The rebellion had been silent for decades, growing in the shadows, feeding on dissatisfaction and fear. Now they moved boldly in the heart of the capital. "Turn to, they know of you," she said, her voice low but urgent, "and they see your arrival as a challenge to their power." His eyes narrowed. "Then we must show them what courage can do." "Not yet," she replied. "First we survive." They descended to the central platform together, addressed the palace guards and loyal citizens through the citywide communication system. "Rebellion or not, this city belongs to all of. Leave now or face the consequences of your defiance." A murmur of hesitation spread through the crowd. The rebellion's leaders emerged, cloaked in black, their faces hidden but their intent clear. They carried energy weapons, small but lethal, and they advanced slowly, testing the loyalty of the guards. Stepped forward beside the queen. His presence alone seemed to shift the tension. Something about his calm determination radiated strength. He did not draw a weapon. He did not shout orders. He simply stood, human and resolute, challenging the rebellion with sheer courage. The leader of the rebels hesitated. A human standing beside an alien queen, living proof that myths could survive, was not what they expected. Fear flickered across their faces. Whispered to your spirit, it is already changing them. Nodded, then let it guide us. The first wave of rebels faltered, unsure whether to attack or retreat. The palace, for the first time in generations, felt the trembling of change, a shift born not from technology or strategy, but from the courage of one human who refused to bow. And in that moment, Queen realized something profound. Legends did not survive because they were remembered. They survived because someone brave enough carried them into the impossible. The palace gates shook as the first wave of the rebellion surged forward. Energy beams lit the air, and the sound of alarms echoed like distant thunder. Queen stood at the front of her forces, her silver cloak catching the light of the rising sun. Behind her, the loyal guards braced themselves, and beside her, his presence radiated a calm certainty that seemed impossible in such chaos. The rebels advanced cautiously. They had trained for years to overthrow the throne, but nothing had prepared them for this. A human standing unflinching beside a queen, his eyes bright with purpose, his posture unwavering. "Hold your ground," commanded. Her voice carried across the courtyard, resonating with authority and determination. "We defend not just our empire, but our future." Didn't wait for permission. He stepped forward, drawing no weapon, moving through the ranks of the rebellion as if invisible to them. His approach was simple: courage, steadiness, and the undeniable confidence of one who had survived the impossible. The rebels hesitated. Many of them expected fear in his eyes, hesitation in his movements. They found none. Some even faltered, stepping back as they faced the strange energy that seemed to flow from his presence. He wasn't powerful like a soldier of, yet his human spirit carried something stronger than technology or numbers. One of the leaders lunged forward, aiming a plasma blade at. In a fluid motion, grabbing the attacker's arm and twisting it, disarming him without a single blow to kill. Another tried to strike him from behind, but anticipated it, using the momentum of his own movement to force the attacker off balance. The palace guards watched in awe. They had never seen courage like this. Every move made was precise, deliberate, and full of calm authority. And in that calm, the rebellion began to waver. Observed him closely. She realized something she had not allowed herself to feel for decades: hope. It was raw and immediate, spreading through the ranks of loyalists and citizens alike. Where there had been fear, there was now determination. Where there had been hesitation, there was resolve. His eyes met hers. No words passed between them, none were needed. His courage became a beacon, a living testament that one being could make a difference, even against overwhelming odds. A group of rebels regrouped and charged at the palace gates, attempting to breach the defenses. Ran ahead, positioning himself between them and the civilians who had gathered behind the palace walls. He did not fight to kill, only to protect, his actions deliberate and unwavering. Then something extraordinary happened. One by one, rebels began lowering their weapons. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the display of human resilience and the unshakable presence of the queen beside him. Whispers rippled through the crowd. A human standing, fearless. Queen raised her hand. "Stop! This empire belongs to all who live in it. Lay down your arms." Stepped forward, his voice calm but resolute. "You do not have to follow fear. You do not have to fight for destruction. There is another way." The leader of the rebels stared at him, anger and disbelief flickering across his face. You are just one human." Smiled faintly, almost sadly. "One human can survive the impossible. One human can face darkness that devours worlds, and one human can choose to stand for what is right." It was not a threat. It was a truth that hit harder than any weapon. The leader faltered, then slowly lowered his blade. Around him, the remaining rebels followed suit. Some dropped to their knees. Others simply stared, stunned. The battle was over before it had truly begun. The citizens who had feared rebellion might tear their empire apart, now looked on in amazement. Not at the technology or armies, but at the human standing beside their queen, the symbol of courage, resilience, and hope. Stepped beside. "You have done more than survive trials or prove legends," she said quietly. You have changed the hearts of my people. You have reminded them what it means to be brave. Looked around at the stunned crowd, then back at her. I did what I had to do, he said simply, because hope is stronger than fear, courage is stronger than power. The queen smiled, a rare, unguarded expression. And now, she said, the empire stands united not by fear, not by might, but by the spirit of one human. For the first time in decades, felt the full weight of possibility. A human, a single, fragile, indomitable human, had come to her empire and reminded her people why legends endure. Not because of power, not because of history, but because of heart. And in that moment, the queen knew the future had changed forever. The night fell over like a blanket of silver and shadow. The city glowed faintly beneath the towers, but Queen could not rest. Even after the rebellion's swift collapse, unease clung to the air. She stood at her balcony, the wind tugging at her cloak, and looked toward the distant stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the safe edges of their galaxy, the darkness had warned her about was waiting. Approached quietly, his boots silent on the balcony floor. He stood beside her, shoulders straight despite the exhaustion etched into his face. His gaze followed hers to the glittering cosmos. They are still out there, he said softly. The Force, it moves faster than we can track. It consumes worlds indiscriminately. Nodded, her hands gripping the railing. And yet you came here alone, through impossible space, just to warn us. I do not know how you carry such weight without breaking. Lips pressed into a thin line. I've broken more times than I can count, but breaking is part of surviving, part of keeping the hope alive. Studied him. She had ruled for decades, faced countless enemies, but never had she felt the raw, unshakable courage emanating from a single human. In him she saw the essence of legends, alive and tangible. And yet, she saw something else too, the exhaustion, the loneliness, the burden of survival. You do not have to face this alone, she said quietly. He shook his head slightly. I do not ask for companionship in the journey to warn. I only ask for ears to listen, and for hands willing to act if the darkness comes. Placed a hand gently on his arm. It was a small gesture, but full of meaning. Then you shall have both. The Empire will stand with you. I will stand with you. Looked at her, a faint flicker of surprise passing through his eyes. Why would a queen trust a human like this? Because legends are never just stories, she said, her voice firm. They exist because someone proves them true. You are proof. For a moment, silence wrapped them like a cocoon. The weight of distant stars, the memories of destroyed worlds, and the uncertain future pressed upon them. And yet, in that silence, a quiet understanding grew. Tomorrow, said, turning toward him, we will begin preparations, ships, fleets, strategies, but tonight you rest. You have earned it. He nodded, though he did not move to leave. Instead, he remained by her side, gazing at the constellations, as if drawing strength from their cold, distant light. Hours passed in quiet companionship. Did not speak of the throne or the council or the endless decisions she faced. Did not recount the horrors he had endured or the darkness that chased him. In that quiet, they simply existed, two beings from entirely different worlds, connected by fate and courage. Finally broke the silence. Do you ever wonder, he asked quietly, why humans were meant to survive against impossible odds? Considered this. Perhaps it is not just survival that matters, she said slowly. Perhaps it is the choice to act when survival seems hopeless that defines greatness. His gaze met hers. Then maybe that is why I am here, not just to warn, not just to survive, but to remind others what it means to face fear without surrender. His chest tightened. She had seen courage before, yes, but this was different. It was raw, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. It inspired, demanded respect, and carried a weight that could move worlds. The night deepened, stars burning brighter against the dark void. And in that moment the queen realized something profound. Survival alone was not enough. It was courage, heart, and unwavering spirit that shaped destiny. She whispered almost to herself, the legends were true, and now they have a future. Looked at her then, and for the first time he allowed a small, genuine smile. Not just for hope, but for recognition. Someone across the stars saw him, truly saw him, and understood the burden he bore. The galaxy was vast, full of darkness and uncertainty. But together, Queen and the human named had ignited a spark, one that could light the way through the void. And in the quiet of the night, that spark began to grow. The sky above burned with the light of 1,000 ships. Word of the coming darkness had reached the Empire's outermost sectors, and fleets had been mobilized with unprecedented speed. Queen stood at the command platform, her silver cloak shimmering against the starlight. Beside her, adjusted the controls of the central navigation system, his hands steady despite the tension in the air. "This is it," said quietly, though her voice carried across the platform. "The moment that decides not just the Empire but countless lives across the galaxy." Nodded, "I know." There was no fear in his tone, only determination, the kind that had carried him across impossible distances, through devastation, and into the heart of a queen's empire. The first wave of the darkness appeared beyond the outer rim. It was not a fleet, not a single entity. They were shadows, vast and shifting, devouring the light of stars and warping space around them. Entire systems had already fallen, and now they moved toward. Turn 2, we have everything prepared. Our fleets, our defenses, our people, but you are the key. Your courage must guide them. Looked out at the approaching shadows, then back at her. "It's not just courage," he said. "It's the willingness to stand even when hope seems lost. That's what humans do. That's what we survive on. That's what makes the impossible possible." The Queen's eyes softened. "Then we face this together." The battle began with a roar. Energy beams tore through the void, ships darted and twisted like living creatures, and the darkness advanced with relentless hunger. The fleets fired in perfect coordination, yet every victory felt temporary. The enemy was vast, unyielding, and intelligent. Moved through the command deck with calm precision. His strategies were unconventional, shaped by human intuition rather than alien protocols. He anticipated movements the sensors had not detected. He advised pilots to act in ways no commander had considered, trusting instincts born of survival and resilience. The Queen watched in awe. Every decision made seemed to turn the tide slightly. Every risk he took inspired those around him. Where fear might have spread, courage took root. Where doubt lingered, determination surged. Hours passed. The darkness pressed harder, consuming ships and threatening the outer cities. And yet, through the chaos, remained unbroken, his presence a beacon. Finally gave a command, "Now lead them." The human stepped forward, his voice carrying over the communication channels. "All units, trust in each other, trust in your courage. We can survive this. Move together." Something extraordinary happened. The fleets, inspired by a single human, acted as one. Maneuvers flowed with fluidity, weapons fired with precision, and shields held as if strengthened by will alone. The darkness began to falter, confused by the unexpected unity, slowed by the determination that no machine, no alien fleet, and no ancient force could anticipate. His heart raced as she watched the battle turn. The impossible was happening. The last survivor of a destroyed world was leading them to victory, not because of strength, not because of technology, but because of spirit. At last, the darkness recoiled, retreating into the void from which it had come. Systems that had been threatened were spared. Stars that had flickered in danger shone steady once more. The fleets have cheered, and citizens across the Empire celebrated not just survival, but triumph. Turned to, her eyes filled with gratitude and wonder. You truly are the human of legend," she said, her voice soft, emotional. "The one who reminds us that hope, courage, and heart can overcome even the impossible." Smiled faintly, exhausted but unbowed. "I am only the one standing here today. The real power is in everyone willing to fight for what matters, no matter the odds." She reached out, taking his hand. For the first time, their differences, the species, the worlds, the histories, mattered less than the bond forged in courage and survival. "The legends were true," she whispered again, louder this time, with conviction that carried through the palace and the empire. "And now, together, we will write a new story for the galaxy." Looked up at her, eyes shining with relief and something deeper, trust, respect, and the quiet joy of being seen for who he truly was. "Then let's write it," he said. Together, the Queen of and the human named stood on the platform, watching the first light of a new day rise across their empire. The galaxy was still vast, still full of unknowns, but in that moment, hope burned brighter than any darkness. And the legends, long believed lost, had become reality.